Okay, now we're going to start with our checklist. Okay, on the air brake, we just finished doing the air brakes. Air brakes, it has to be 100%. You can't miss nothing on the air brakes. Okay. Now we're starting with our checklist. Okay, this is where your points start communicating if you miss anything. If you organize yourself how to say your checklist, you won't miss anything. You only have 15 points, and it starts from the checklist, and that includes the walk around. So if you organize how to say your checklist, you save yourself 15 points on the outside. Okay. Let's begin doing this. Okay, I like to start with my front shield. I'm going to start with my wipers. Make sure the wipers are not cracked or broken, that the rubber blades are not torn or not cracked, that they're properly mounted. Check the front windshield. Make sure the windshield is not cracked or broken, that I have a clear view, that the weather strippings or seals are not torn or cracked or faded by the sun. Checking the mirrors. Make sure the mirrors are not cracked or broken, properly adjusted, and also properly mounted to the truck. Door window. Make sure it rolls up and it rolls down and it's not cracked or broken. Also, we're checking the door that it opens and closes and locks properly. Next is the seat belt. Making sure the seat belt latches in and latches out or no tears. Back side window, that it's not cracked or broken, that the seals or weather strippings are not torn or cracked or faded by the sun. Okay, I took care of everything that's all shoulder height. Okay, next, I'll leave it to my highway horn. This is my city horn. We're making sure it's working properly. What is my arms touching right now? The steering. Steering should have no more than 2-inch play. What comes after that? Clutch. No more than 1-inch play. What's between the clutch and steering wheel? The steering column. Make sure the steering column is not cracked or broken, that the screws and bolts are properly tight. Okay, I come to my panels. I'm going to work myself here, all the way to the side, to the shifter, and to the floor. Okay, the headlights. Low beams should turn on and off. The high beams should turn on and off. Right signal and left signal should turn on and off. Emergency lights, 4-ways, should turn on and off. Come to the wipers. We're making sure they turn on and off. The washer level for the wipers should be at a maximum level, and it should turn on and off. Panel lights, it should turn on and off. Come to our gauges. Oil pressure should be from 20 to 60 psi. The water temperature should be from 170 to 195. The voltmeter, it doesn't show we have one, but we gotta say it. It should be from 12 to 15 or in the green section. Fuel, no less than a quarter tank of diesel. Making sure all our gauges are working properly and they're not cracked or broken. Parking brake and trailer brake, no cracks and no leaks. The heater and defroster, all 3 speeds should turn on and off. What is my arm touching? The shifter. Shifter should not be cracked or broken, shifts properly to its gear, that the boot has no tears and no cracks. Plate and screws are properly mounted and they're not loose. I have 3 emergency triangles. We're making sure they're not cracked or broken or missing. Fire extinguisher should be updated and to a maximum level. Okay, this truck's equipped with circuit breakers, and we make sure we have spares. And that concludes my checklist. Okay, now that concludes our air brake inspection, and that concludes our checklist. Now we're going to do the walk around pre-trip. Okay, now we're here doing the pre-trip walk around. Okay, you have when you start your pre-trip walk around, you will start it by a section per section, a step by step. You're going to be using your hands, be talking and pointing at the same time. Okay, when you finish your air brake inspection, you will come out in front of the truck and stand in the center. You're going to be talk about the lights, the windshield, the wipers, the signal lights, the headlights, and you're going to be checking for leaks. Okay? I'm going to start with my top lights. The 3 in the center indicates it's a commercial vehicle. The 2 on the side indicates the height and the width of the vehicle. Making sure these lights turn on and off, they're not cracked or broken, properly mounted to the truck, proper color is amber. Okay, Now we come to the windshield and wipers. You will tell the examiner, I already set it inside. Would you like me to say it again? Because you did it inside when you did your checklist. And if he says no, then you move on. Okay, my signal lights. Turning signals, make sure they turn on and off. They're not cracked or broken, that they're properly mounted to the truck, and the proper color is amber. Now I come to my headlights. High beam and low beam should turn on and off. They're not cracked or broken, and they're properly mounted to the truck. Now we come to check our leaks. We're checking for oil leaks, power steering leaks, coolant leaks, and we're listening for air leaks. See? What you want to do is motivate yourself, get into it, show some personality. You know, motivate yourself to do this. You will do it. Okay, now we're going to start in the engine compartment on the passenger side. Okay, I'll come to the reservoir. Make sure the reservoir is not cracked or leaking, that it's properly mounted. The water should be at its maximum level. If it's not, I would add it on top. We're checking the hoses. Make sure the hoses are not cracked or leaking, that they're properly mounted tight. Come to the alternator. Should have no exposed wires or bare wires, that the alternator is properly mounted, that it's not loose, and it's belt driven. Checking the water pump. Make sure the water pump is not cracked or leaking, that it's properly mounted, that it's not loose. Checking the hoses. Make sure there's no cracks and no leaks, and they're properly mounted. Clamps are properly tight, and it's also belt driven. We're making sure that our belts are not cracked or torn, not too tight or too loose, that we have proper tension. So there's three things you got to talk about on this side: coolant, alternator, and water pump. Now we go to the driver's side. Okay, come to the oil. This is where I check the oil. I will take the dipstick out, I will clean it. If I need to, I will add it on top. Now I come to the compressor and governor. Compressor and governor is gear driven. I should have no cracks and no leaks, and they should be properly mounted. Now we come to the hoses, making sure the hoses have no cracks and they have no leaks, and they're properly mounted, that the clamps are properly tight. Come to the power steering reservoir, and I come to the power steering pump. It's also gear driven. We're making sure the power steering pump, it has no cracks and no leaks, that it's properly mounted. Checking the hoses for no cracks and leaks, and they're properly mounted. Now we come to the reservoir. The reservoir should have no cracks and no leaks, that it's also properly mounted tight and it's not loose. It should be at its maximum proper level. If it's not, I will add it on top. Also the hose. Making sure the hose has no cracks and no leaks, that they're properly mounted tight, the clamps are tight, not loose. Also, check the frame. Frame should have no cracks and no legal weldings. Okay, now we come to a section. This is my steering section. Start with the steering column. Make sure it's not cracked or bent, that the U-joints are well greased and they're properly mounted. Checking the steering box. It should have no cracks, it should have no leaks, that it's properly mounted tight, that it's not loose. Also has a hose. Make sure the hoses are not cracked, they're not leaking, and they're properly mounted tight. Now we come to the steering linkages. All my steering linkages should not be cracked, broken. Checking the bolts and castle nuts, that all the bolts and castle nuts are not loose or not missing, that they're properly tight. Checking the cotter pins, that all the cotter pins are not cracked or broken or missing. Checking the bushings, all the bushings should not be torn, should not be cracked or missing. Okay, now we come to our suspension. Key sections, most repeated sections: suspension to the brakes to the tires, suspension, brakes and tires, suspension, brakes and tires. Start from the suspension to the brakes, and you work yourself to the tires. Okay, we'll start with the spring mount. Making sure the spring mount is not cracked or broken, that it's properly mounted to the frame. Checking the bushings, they're inside the spring mount. Make sure they're not cracked or broken or missing. We come to our leaf springs. Should have no legal weldings, they should not be cracked or broken. That the U-bolts should also not be cracked or broken, they should not be loose, that they're properly mounted tight. Now we come to the shock absorber. Shock absorber should not be cracked or broken or bent. That it's properly mounted. That the bushings are not torn or cracked or missing. Now we come to our brake section. These are our service brakes. Checking the hoses. Make sure there's no cracks and no leaks, that they're properly mounted tight. This is the brake chamber. Brake chamber should have no cracks and no leaks, that the brackets and bolts are properly tight. Slack adjuster should be at a 90-degree angle, that the cotter pins are not missing. The push rod, keep your eye on the push rod. This is the push rod that's going to come out. That's the push rod. Push rod should have no more than 1-inch play, but to adjust these brakes, I should have no more than 1 inch and a quarter. I will grab a 9/16, turn it clockwise tight on adjusting it, and back it off a quarter. That's the way you adjust these brakes. Brake drum. No oil, no grease, and no cracks. Brake shoes should have no less than a quarter. Now we come to the tires. The inflation is 90 to 105 or manufacturer recommended. The condition should have no cuts, bubbles, or nails in either side. The tire, the depth is 432 seconds, and these tires are not permitted to be recapped. Now we come to the valve stem. It should not be touching the rim or leaking any air. The rim should have no cracks and no legal weldings. All the lug nuts should not be loose, they should not be missing, that they're properly tight. We come to the hub oil seal. Should have no cracks, no leaks, that the bolts are properly tight. This is where I check the hub oil level, and this is where I'm going to add it if I need some. At DMV, you don't have to open this. Okay, so remember, you have sections here. You start with your oil, compressor and governor, power steering pump, frame, the steering section, and then suspension, brakes, and tires. Okay, now we come to the driver's side tractor. Okay, the mirrors, the window, and the door. Remember, during your checklist, you already said everything inside. But that's why you asked the examiner, would you like me to repeat the mirrors, window, and door? I already said it inside. If he says no, then you move on. If he says yes, then you talk about it again. And you say, make sure the door is not damaged, that will put me out of service. Now we come to the back side of the tractor. The windows, back window, wipers, reservoir. I already said it inside. Would you like me to say it again? If the examiner says no, then you move on. But if he says yes, he wants to hear it again, then you talk about the window, back window, and you talk about the washer wire again. Okay? Come to the fuel tank. Making sure the straps and seals are not cracked or broken, that the straps and fuel tank are properly mounted to the frame. We have a cap here. The cap should not be missing. We also have a seal, making sure the seal is not torn or cracked, that the T-chain is not missing. At DMV, you don't have to take the cap out, you just talk about it. And we should have no diesel leaks. Now we come to our battery box. We're making sure the battery box is not hanging, that it's not loose, that it's properly mounted to the frame. Okay, we go inside. Once again, at DMV, you don't have to open the battery box. But I'm going to open it to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, the cables should have no exposed wires or bare wires. Terminals should have no corrosion. The battery level should be at a maximum level, and I should have no battery leaks. Okay.